Welcome, crypto enthusiasts, to the Independent Reserve Podcast.
Right. Independent Reserve Podcast, episode 23. I think we've already started. We're just come to splicing the earlier stuff. So Jared, the unsung hero of the podcast, is here today, behind the scenes. He waved, but no one can see him. Thanks for coming along, Steve. This has been a long time in the making. In fact, when we first started doing this show, you were the first person I reached out to. I'm like, Steve knows everyone. And I'll ask Steve if he wants to be on, and I'll ask him who he knows who wants to be on, and maybe you do get instructions. And that was 2 years ago.
That
but
checks
we finally
out.
made it. We finally made it.
But I had to ease into the idea. Everything looks like it's very comfortable and professional at this point in time. So I think we've timed it perfectly at episode number 23.
Episode number 23. Because Jared, it's actually technically 24, but we had one episode which had to scratch because halfway through the episode we used to have the microphones run up to the bottom of the table, and then that was with Joni, and I've Joni, and so I've been trying to get her back on, but she's been busy as well. But we kicked out the microphone like halfway through the episode, so it just came through all garbled, and it was just us looking silly. Anyway, here we are. Steve, I've got this list that AI has dutifully produced for us. I'm not going to stick to any of it because I know as soon as I ask you first question, that might be the last one I ask. But you have lots happening, which, look, we're going to cover everything, but travel, upcoming, talk us through that. Yeah.
Well, I figure it's a great time to leave the country. The reality at the moment is there's an election that's coming up, and sort of a lot of the regulatory stuff's in flux. So we thought, what can we do that actually continues to deliver value locally and overseas? And so Rochelle and I sat down and said, what's happening in different parts of the world? What markets matter to Australia? And found good excuses to travel to them. So the first sort of tranche of the trip for us is Dubai, Zurich, all conference related. So Dubai is Token 2049, Zurich is 0.0 Forum. We go via New York to Toronto where consensus is happening. So that's sort of trip number one. And then we're back here for a few weeks. And trip number two is Washington. So we're heading to DC to participate in something on Capitol Hill, which should be fun. Permissionless in New York, City Week in London. And then we come back here and we wonder where much of the year has gone.
We should mention NFT NYC has made a comeback this year though, so that
NFTs
is
are back.
NFTs are back apparently, but that's on the same week as permissionless as well, so we might pop our heads in to see what they're doing.
NFT Fest. Hey, you founded NFT Fest.
Oh yes. We actually spoke about it last week. Last week we were revisiting some of the odd content that we created for it, and it's held up quite nicely actually. But all I remember from that week, it was 2 days, is all the behind the scenes that went into it. I think it was our first big blockbuster event. We did it with Greg Oakford, and I think we broke Greg when we ran that. But it was a big success actually. It was probably the most fun in terms of like what we curated and created. It was peak COVID times. Everyone was wanting to get out of their houses. We somehow wangled something together in St Kilda. And I think we got about 1,000 people through the door. And
Nice.
It was a very, very intense couple of days. But
How long do NFTs are back in Australia? They're already back.
Well, listen, someone needs to tell us. Like we sort of checked out. I think when we did the event, it was a few weeks after FTX, and everything was going to be fine until it wasn't. So we kind of parked the NFT story, and we've left it for others to carry that torch forward.
Good stuff. Well, I don't normally have to do an introduction. I feel like I don't have to do a huge introduction with you, Steve. Blockchain APAC, I think anyone and everyone in crypto already knows it. For maybe the three people outside of crypto who don't know who you are and what Blockchain APAC does, do you want to give us an intro?
It's pretty weird, as in the backstory is a long one, but the short version is, in previous versions of my life, I did different things. Like I was a lawyer for a period of time, I did digital strategy stuff and basically management consulting. That all morphed into an interest in this space. And so relatively early, not early enough to make a lot of money, but early enough to know I should have made a lot of money. When I took an interest in the space, I just sort of built out really sort of strong community networks. Accidentally became the CEO of Blockchain Australia at the time, which is now Deka. And then when I handed the keys back for that role after a couple of successful years, I said to Rochelle, there are topics that I think we should be focusing in on. And so I said, are you up for a wild ride? And Rochelle quite crazily took the opportunity to not be guaranteed any success or money. And I said, it'll be interesting. And she said, yeah, let's give it a go. So the last few years, we've built out an extraordinarily strong sort of network around Australia, the region and the world. And so now we just we give advice on the one side. We sort of periodically run events as a mechanism to bring people together, but we're trying to steer people away from pointy edges and cliffs is probably the bulk of the time we put into this space.
Absolutely wild. So how does, we see you guys on the road all the time and we all go to events, all this kind of stuff. What's the dynamic like for you guys behind the scenes?
Professional. So Rochelle's face says straight away, it couldn't be more
We're incredibly professional. We have a lot of systems in place. No, that's not the case at all. We run a very chaotic ship, I think, but it just happens to work. It's very... we've been trying to put a little bit more structure behind our lives at the moment, but it's really sort of viewing how the industry has sort of moved, especially in Australia over the last couple of years. There has been a very visible change from what it was 4 to 5 years ago to what it is now. And we just really like getting people together that we like in the industry as well. Yeah. Like it's the amount of work that we put into creating these environments and events is because we want the best for the industry and we want the best for the people that we care about in this industry as well. So the behind the scenes is chaotic. I try to decipher a lot of Steve's code and whiteboards a lot of the time. If anyone's ever been blessed to experience a Steve Vallas whiteboard session,
love it.
There's some memes around that whiteboard experience, I imagine.
There really is. I often reference Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I think. There's a meme where he's got the whiteboard and all the ropes and stuff. Yeah. That's what it's like deciphering Steve's whiteboard sessions all the time. And his left-handed capitalisation writing is very difficult to decipher, but we get there in the end.
This now feels like some sort of intervention. So the other critical part in the way we sort of do stuff, Lee, is we work in sprints. And so I think the mistake in this space in particular, which you've experienced firsthand, is someone says, here's what my plan is for the next 2 years. You go, you can scrap that plan after 2 months. And so we tend to work in quarters. And so for us, this sort of just-in-time kind of approach, it's more pressure, but the truth is we kind of have a much better sense of what's likely to happen in the next 90 and 120 days. And so we kind of set these milestones that don't try to think too far ahead, except in a sort of in a really sort of 30,000-foot sort of way. Yeah,
absolutely. I remember this, my first year, sitting down with Lasanka at the beginning of the year in sort of 2022. Let's call it January 2022. We all know what happened in January 2022. We sat down and we said, here's the segments, here's all the verticals we're going to really focus in on, here's how we're going to do it. Of course, FTX happened and we had to end up being the biggest clients, the biggest segment that we went after. In the end of 22, we weren't even aware of at the beginning of 2022, and that's how quickly things come online. And I know it's a difficult thing to sort of articulate that to people outside the industry. That you've got 3 months. If you've got more than 3 months planning, good luck to you.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, one thing. I remember again going back in time, 2021. I remember my first blockchain week, which you were still at the helm of Blockchain Australia at that time, and there's a week long events, morning, afternoon sessions, all this kind of stuff. And it was just, there was a lot going on. And I remember sort of emailing things and people were like, just email Steve. And I didn't realise at the time that all the organisation was like a big long event. But it wasn't about a team, it was just you. Up to 3 a.m. every morning, kind of working out invites, working out events, working out who's coming, who's not coming.
The secret to success, and it was the team was myself with Amy Rose as well, sort of in the DECA role, the Blockchain Australia role, Rochelle doing all the comms, and Merritley. So it was sort of 4 of us, which collectively was 2.5 full-time employees. And so the assumption has always been, there's a big team. But the difference is, but I love the subject matter. I know the subject matter. So the bit that people normally hand off, we don't hand off the things we think are important. And so that construct, which, we look back now, I think it was 250 speakers across those 5 days. And we were running IRL and virtual simultaneously across those days, and that was, I think we had 15 billionaires that sort of chimed in. All these things that we now look at, it's kind of forgotten in the passage of time. It's nice that you remember it in the complexity, because we look at it and think the interest and the value that was available to everyone each day. There was so much sort of complexity, but it only worked because, and Rochelle and I do this to this day with the two of us, we see 100% of the emails, and so it's very easy to make sure you don't lose the thread of things. Whereas when you say, here's the comms person, here's the strategy person, here's the domain, you kind of lose that. So for us, that's the strength.
The structure of that week as well, Blockchain Week 2022, we were still peak COVID times. We decentralised the conference structure. So there was 2 days in Sydney, 1 day in Melbourne, 1 virtual day, and then Brisbane on the final day. And we did it that way because if one city got shut down, the week could still continue on. So if Sydney got shut down, which wouldn't have been the case really at the time. Melbourne was our highest risk.
Yep.
So we decentralised the whole conference. It was gruelling for us because we had to fly to every city. So I think we were in Sydney from the weekend. We flew out that Tuesday night, stayed in the Melbourne CBD, which is our home as well, by the way. And we had a business breakfast that morning. We had to be up at 5, run the whole conference day. That evening we had an event. The next day was virtual. We flew out to Brisbane, and then Friday was our final day.
Yeah.
And it was truly, I think, like, my body still remembers the trauma.
I'm just thinking about it. I'm just hearing that.
It was an incredibly grueling week, but we, especially in recent times, but before we ran Policy Week this year, I said to Steve, I kind of want to revisit that structure and sort of deliver something very similar for Policy Week that we did for Blockchain Week in 2022, but it was very intense.
And it was constructed to survive the apocalypse. You know, that was the way we'd sort of done. But it's reflective of some of the other stuff we do. Like, and this is, everyone lives in pockets. I think this is the bit that's lost. You know, I had a discussion / disagreement / argument with someone the other day. We were sitting across, it was a traditional financial service person who said crypto people or the industry. I said, who are you talking about? He goes, the industry. I said, which industry? And so you always have these people, when you speak about this subject matter, people talk about it monolithically. And then I said, no one says the financial services industry and then doesn't go into the subcategory. Okay? If you talk about bankers, you know you're talking about. If you're talking about insurance, financial service industry. I said there's a tendency when people don't like this space to say the industry. And so when I think of events, I try to make sure we kind of part out these elements, and that's traditionally what we've done when it comes to subject matter as well, is you go, this is relevant to this segment and this segment and this segment. I think that's part of the reason why we've had a lot of cut through, because when you show up, it's tailored largely to the audience as opposed to a one-size-fits-all, which is normally the sort of the way people have to pull these things together.
Yeah, gotcha. So take us on a bit of a journey then through for Blockchain APAC, sort of, I guess, what made you decide to do it in the first place? And what's sort of been just take us on the journey. What was it like when you begin? What was the big challenges you think you never saw coming, and, you know, this kind of stuff? And where do you kind of feel you are now, and what's kind of missing still?
Sure. There was the prequel that people don't know about. The prequel was there was an event in 2018.
Oh, here we go.
That was called Blockchain APAC. It was an event, and it was an enterprise blockchain conference, because we all thought enterprises were coming on board and it was all going to happen simultaneously. And at that point, I got 500 people who I showed up to their offices and I said, we're going to have this conference about blockchain. And people said, good on you, champ. Good luck with it. And that was it. And so that's what happened. So the idea, the business was up and running early. We paused it when I got the role at Blockchain Australia.
Oh, really? So it was just delayed?
It was delayed. So the history of that was, it sort of predates everything. So Blockchain APAC existed. We did these things. But I thought, let's pause it whilst we sort of try to bring the industry together under the banner of the association. And so then when we came out of it, the assessment, and this is kind of a reflection of where we are now to varying degrees, I said to Rochelle, here are the subject matters I think are of the most interest. One of them was custody and sort of the general themes around custody. And I thought that's a sort of a maturation point the industry needs to get to. One was, it was meant to be stable coins, but the truth is payments are easier to get across the line as a conversation. When I was trying to talk about stable coins 2.5 years ago, people didn't care. And so payments and stable coins generally as a cohort of conversations. And then the other one was meant to be sort of KYC, AML, CFT stuff. But that subject matter has consumed the landscape. Scams, as an example, they've just taken so much oxygen out of all conversation. But they were basically the three buckets. And so...
Okay. What year was that, sorry?
That was 3 years ago. So that was as soon as we came out of the role with Blockchain Australia. I said to Rochelle, let's thematically drive this business, not drive it by a particular sort of overarching. I think these are the subjects that are going to move the industry forward. And so they're the sort of the broad sort of buckets that we've been sort of pushing conversations into.
Part of the reason I find that fascinating was that back in when I just used that example before having a chat with LP, Lasanko, many names people know him by, but that was the thing that came out of 2022 that we didn't really see coming as being a general thematic that has since sort of dominated, being the fastest growing, most legitimate in sort of inverted commas use case is just the growth of people using stable coins for international payments. Yeah. So
we tried to get that conversation going. So when we ran the digital asset conference back in, I can't remember what it was.
2023.
That was meant to be a centrepiece. And I couldn't stand up a table there. As in, we were saying to people, hey, there's this conversation, this subject matter, it's coming. And everyone was like, we're not so sure. And of all the things we did in that event, had a lot of sort of interesting conversations, that fell over because people wouldn't commit to that conversation. So when you flash forward and it's like it's the only use case, it makes so much sense and we're all on board. So tried to get there early and sort of drag this conversation forward, which is why I have some frustration for industry participants locally, because we really could have had that conversation 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. But it didn't feel ready enough locally, so people just parked it. So that's what we try to do, and this is part of the advantage of travelling as much as we do, is what does that conversation look like? And I see staking as an example at the moment of something which I think will pick up steam locally, because we've already seen it's built up much more momentum in jurisdictions outside of Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, I mean, particularly for the payments and the stablecoin stuff, we see so much of it through Asia. Right, so much of it through Asia. So we have our business in Singapore. We have our, we're looking at our eyes on Dubai and all this kind of place like that. And that there has gone from zero to a significant chunk within the space of just a few years. So you can only imagine that, give it another decade, just how, that's going to be. Like, where does Australia sort of sit? Because we still feel like we're still so behind. And I know there's some really reputable people trying to build some Australian stablecoin projects and this kind of stuff. But we haven't kind of cracked it yet. And what do we need here locally to get that?
We're definitely behind, and part of it, I sort of observe it rather than lament it. We've been around long enough to sort of recognise that sometimes it's our own fault and sometimes the sort of circumstance around it. The reality, I think, in the last year and a half or two, is that markets have accelerated. It's not necessarily. I mean, we've not done a great deal, but we've suffered from the fact that other markets have moved, and people haven't seen momentum. Like, when we were in the US before Donald Trump was elected, long before, we came back from those trips saying we can see the momentum at a state level, we can see the momentum in legislature, we can see the momentum in jurisdictional sort of fights and court cases. Everyone was just waiting for the top signal, and the top signal was that there's a president who's interested in the space, but all that work was done. And so we kept coming back saying, it's moving, and it was kind of like, it's not moving. Gary Gensler at one end, and Dems, and then it was Gary Gensler and Trump, and people just thought, that's the tipping point. The tipping point had largely happened before that. People just did not see how much work was being done. So that's kind of, from our perspective, something that we recognise, and we're trying to bring that back into the local conversation. You add external factors like timings of elections, priorities about things like Trump and his impact globally, cost of living. Very hard in that context to say, and by the way, digital assets are something you should focus on. So some of the things are macro issues that have worked against us, and others have been the fact that we've been asleep at the wheel when it comes to some of these outcomes. The
Trump thing is what everyone wants to talk about at the moment, and no doubt the fact that we had a sort of pro-crypto, administration in the US, things changed 180 overnight. They really did. And you felt it here in Australia, and certainly anyone in crypto felt it. What kind of stuff have you seen from your conversations about the Trump effect on here in Australia? Like, have you seen anything directly, or had any conversations around that?
I think we're seeing it now in the way the political sphere is being influenced here. I was more focused on, and we were more focused on London last year, because we thought we can't be America, we can't compete with America. No one thinks America when they think Australia and digital assets. What we're more likely to do is align ourselves with other jurisdictions. So we've looked to what other jurisdictions are doing in response to what's happening in the US, and then try to take some cues. So whereas everyone's sort of looking straight at the sun that is the US, we've said what's happening in the UK, what's the FCA doing, and we went over there around an event called the RegTech Forum, which everyone thought was a bit silly. Why are you going to the UK when all the attention's in the US? But the FCA is giving us a lot of sort of general attention. So I think the US bit, I was in America for a couple of days early in the year, and the thing that is noticeable in the US that is very different here is clearly the weight of money is such an influential conversation in all rooms. But there is a willingness for people to, whether they agree or not, sit in the same rooms together, which there isn't in this jurisdiction. We saw traditional finance businesses, we saw crypto businesses and crypto bros, and we saw everything in between all sort of mashed together because there is a desire to sort of get a commercial outcome. So that's been the difference, and that was kind of the momentum for us. And I know Rochelle and thoughts on that London experience in terms of how obvious it was for us that everyone's trying to find their place in the wake that is the US thing, whether that wake is bringing you along or sort of washing you away.
Yeah, right. I remember Harris and Dell, actually, I guess it does make a bit of sense to be speaking to places like the UK and Singapore and even Canada. And Harry Dell made a point, is like amongst the Commonwealth countries, because we all have a similar legal system, is it's very easy for Commonwealth countries to be like, okay, Singapore, you're the fintech country, and we'll kind of pinch your laws. UK, you can be something else. In Australia, we're the tax guys, apparently. So when it comes to tax policy and tax, the ATO, like other Commonwealth countries look at us. So it still makes a lot of sense. Like if one of those jurisdictions come up with something good, it'd be like, well, that's kind of ready made, right? Can't we just go copy paste?
Yeah, and that familiarity as well. You're right. The historical, the legal systems are similar, but they're usually more conservative approaches here. I described the other day about someone talking about the swinging pendulum in the US, and I said the pendulum's become a windmill here because things have turned around so quickly. Whereas for us, we're just trying to figure out, which way we swing. Do we swing left or right when it comes to this sort of conversation? And that's more. It's easier for us to benchmark that with a jurisdiction like the UK, where there's a lot of shared history in terms of what the legal system has done with these things.
Okay. Hey, so I'm interested in, so if we look at sort of over the blockchain career that you've had, you've obviously been very much involved. I think, you've been involved at every level, from the dealing with the businesses through the policymakers and the politicians, and you kind of know everyone in the space. What has been the surprise over your period of time? Like, what have you kind of went, if I sit back and take the large view over the last 5-10 years or whatever, what has been the change? How would you characterise it?
People are too macro in their thinking, and they don't recognise the value of relationship and one-on-one conversations. We're constantly finding ourselves in rooms where people say, all you need to tell these people and all you need to do is educate. You're going to go, education without context is useless. It's just people yelling at passing cars. And so, that's the thing we've tried to impress upon people. We've had every variation. We've put so many people in rooms where they can articulate their position. It doesn't move people because you need to know what the motivations are for either moving or not moving. And so for all the attention people think they need to get and all the key people, it's actually much less about key people and it's much more about key moments. And so that's what we've tried to do in the creation of key moments, where serendipitously we put you in a room with someone, it's in that moment you kind of go, actually I kind of get what they're saying now, and you have that high touch moment. And this is the marketer in me that comes back that says, you don't buy a product because you saw one ad, you buy a product because you saw 16 ads and you saw people that talking about what was in that product, and ultimately you saw it in front of you and it converts. And so in a similar way we sort of recognise.
We've got a guest. Adrian, come on in. Come on in. Adrian, come in. We've a guest. Oh, we've got an absolute storm. Jumping on in.
Special guest star.
Special guest star.
star.
I don't know. We're going to have to edit this in somehow. Like, somehow sit in the middle here, Adrian. We'll just...
Yeah, come here.
Come on, squeeze in.
Let's just grab a knee.
We're going to Jared's got magical editing skills. In fact, I don't even think you need to cut that, Jared. Just bring it in.
I'll use the...
Are we squeezing?
Let's try.
Squeeze.
The old sound effect from the 6-point order.
I'm the only one that's old enough to know that reference.
I remember that. I'm not that old.
Hello.
What a cameo.
Oh, we're squeezing more.
Bring in cameo. Yeah, as long as everyone's close enough to a microphone.
Yeah, we never planned for this.
That's good.
We'll do this.
Steve
and I will share.
Is this how you plan spontaneously? Okay, you're going to accidentally walk up to the door at exactly this time. Nice work.
I actually just had a nap and I woke up. This is the truth. Lee knows it's the
This is
truth.
the truth. Adrian has a split shift. He does about 8 hours in the office, but then he goes home and he works until about 10 o'clock most nights.
Nice.
10, 11, if he's lucky, because he's kind of working around the clock. So if it
Yeah.
wasn't for that nap, I guess we wouldn't be getting the best out of
I
it.
usually have a nap from about 12:30 till whenever I wake up. I just woke up.
I'm here for that approach. I know the cognitive load, this is something I listen to. I drive Rochelle nuts. You're going to go, how do you get the most out of yourself? Falling asleep for a half an hour
Yeah.
is
You're on
secret sauce.
the 12-minute naps these days.
I can do 12-minute naps now, which is a pretty crazy
See,
thing.
now we're getting to the good stuff.
Yeah.
we need some sleep alpha here. Adrian's the king. He swears by the naps.
Well, I have no choice. I just fall asleep. I used to do it at my desk, but now we've got these rooms in this new office where we have these bean bags and
Just snake out.
they're just sleeping rooms.
I think this is called narcolepsy. It's slightly different.
It could be a heart condition. I don't know.
Might want to get that checked out. Yeah. So what's the go with the 12-minute naps then?
It was a weird thing. I met someone overseas a long time ago who was able to sleep, and it seems odd that you could do it, could sleep for between 1 and 2 minutes. Like, would literally say, I'm going to go inside, wake me in 2 minutes. Like, shut up. And it's like, just trust me. And then over the course of a week or two, we stayed with him, every night he would sleep for 2 minutes. I thought that was ridiculous. And then later on, I thought, if he could sleep for a minute or two, surely I can sleep for a few minutes. And sort of trained myself to be able to... I set the timer for 12 minutes, and somewhere between 0 and 5 or 6 I usually fall asleep.
Just a little micro
nap. And so I fall asleep for between 7 and 12 minutes, depending how quickly I sort of doze off.
Right.
And it works. It kind of works, and it's enough for the reset, and your brain goes, okay, let's... did you try turning it off and turning it on again? And then you go back to it.
Turn it on, turn it off again.
That's kind of the...
Good advice.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
There was a study that was conducted. Some French scientists, in the name of science, locked himself away for 2 or 3 months, whatever. You can check it all out on YouTube or whatever. But this guy locked himself in a cave, effectively, where he had no natural sunlight and no like didn't have a clock or anything like that. But he had like food and he had lights and he could do whatever he wanted. He could do putt-putt or whatever he wanted to do in the cave. But the only thing he couldn't do was have any sort of cues about what time it was. And the whole point of the experiment was to see what would happen to his circadian rhythm and how he would sleep. Any guesses to what actually kind of transpired? Do you know what he ended up sort of doing?
Did he fall asleep for short bursts over the course of?
Or go insane?
I don't think he went insane. Maybe he did. But what they noticed is his sleep pattern was like, this kind of blew me away, but he would sleep for 12 hours and be awake for 48. And that's kind of what happened. Fact checkers, check that out. Yeah, that was the outcome. That he just was like, oh well, if I don't need to sleep. But I guess he wasn't doing that much other than he's keeping record of how he felt and what he thought or whatever. But
Yeah, interesting.
that's kind of the sleep pattern he fell into.
Mr. Beast did the opposite, where he like stayed in a room with the lights all on for like a month, and your passage of time goes about 3 or 4 times faster. They go, what time do you think it is? They go 2 p.m. It's like, no, it's only been an hour.
Wow.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting on the work side. I mean, interesting for us, might not be interesting for anyone who's listening. The way it sort of changed as well. Like I was always a late night person, and now it's up at like 5:30 in the morning, and sort of it flipped at some point in time. And I noticed the productivity much more readily now, whereas I used to be able to sort of just push through late at night. It sort of flipped on its head a few years ago. It seems to be a more efficient way to be spending my time.
We've become those people who just like eat meat and sleep 8 hours and then run. How many kilometres do I run a week? 60 kilometres a week, and then you're good to go.
Rochelle, I've been following you on social media, so you do lots of running.
I do lots of running. I ran a half marathon 2 weeks ago in Canberra.
Nice.
And I ran in 1:51 off no training, so that is very good for my standards.
When you say no training, you mean like all the training you've been doing?
Yes.
So,
All the running you've been doing.
No. So usually you're meant to. We're going off on a complete tangent, but usually you're meant to have a particular training block in the lead up to it. You're meant to eat particular foods, and you're meant to be running at least 4 times a week. I did none of that, and I was meant to run the marathon, and there was no way I was going to do that because I did a marathon last year in Sydney off no training because I had a 6-week Europe trip, and as if I was going to run in Europe. And then it really does like destroy your body if you do 42 kilometres off no training. But this time around, I have an okay fitness base, I think. I didn't think I was going to be able to run under 2 hours this time around, but she went and got it done.
If we average out how much Rochelle runs and how much I run, we're an average runner. Because
Yeah.
I don't run at all, and she runs a lot. So we're averages beautifully.
Exactly.
Well, I guess the tough part, he's not here, but our chief compliance officer, he's a huge marathon, kind of does all this crazy sort of ultra marathon stuff. So I was asking him about it. I was like, I reckon I could just run up and do it. He's like, no way. Like your tendons and your kind of joints need to be toughened up. You got to toughen them up.
What could go wrong? I can tell you what could go wrong. Your glutes blow out, your hammies blow out, you'll start crying at like 30 kilometres.
That's a Tuesday, Rochelle.
That still sounds easier than jiu-jitsu, which is what Lee does.
Oh yeah, I couldn't do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, well, it's even worse when you're not very good at it. Adrian does jiu-jitsu, but he's good at it. So he doesn't spend as much time getting crumpled as I do.
Marginally less.
Adrian, how is jiu-jitsu going?
I think you do it because it's meant to be hard. So it's always going badly. I think that's the whole idea. Because if it's going well, it means you're not really trying hard enough.
Yes. So Adrian's approach is like Adrian used to be a high-level squash player, so he traded in that, which is really bad for your joints, to jiu-jitsu, which is only really kind of not. Well, still bad on your joints.
Squash is probably the worst thing you can do for your body, like maybe just after chain smoking. But honestly, it's just the worst thing for your knees, for your hips, for your ankles. It's just terrible. Jiu-jitsu is more humbling. Like if you know when you have to tap, like you probably won't get as hurt as you would playing squash. But you do have to enjoy the feeling of another man sitting on your face. Which is an acquired taste.
Absolutely.
You're not supposed to taste it.
Probably
where I'm going wrong.
That's the problem. Yeah, often you don't have a choice. It's just all of a sudden it's being imposed on
there
you.
it is.
Like, oh, there it is. Taste of sweaty man.
Right.
Oh,
Okay. Well, the way you guys sell it, I'm just
I know, that's all we go to
I'm not in
jiu-jitsu, guys.
sales, Lee's in sales.
And my son does jiu-jitsu and he's been doing it for years and he's good at it because he's the kid who's like, he's crumpling with other kids. And I was like, oh, this looks like fun. Yeah, it's more fun when you're good at it.
He'll grow into the man who sits on faces as opposed to being the chair.
Yeah, definitely.
I just have visions of Adrian playing squash where people go, I'm out. You go, that's the way you're tapping out on the squash court.
Well, you know what? Squash is kind of a really important part of the IR story because if it wasn't for squash, that's how you met Lasanka.
I wouldn't exist. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't
so,
exist without squash.
Lasanka met through squash. Nick Fletcher we met through squash, who runs our OTC desk. Nathan Briggs, our COO, met through squash. Lasanka met his wife at squash. Like literally, like
Mate,
our
this
lives.
is quite the niche.
Why are we in crypto? We should be in squash.
Well, we were in squash, and then we moved into crypto when our bodies started to
We
fail.
need to we need to unlock the key to the squash to crypto pipeline.
That's so
That's
funny.
what it is.
Yeah, so we're going to have the next Blockchain APAC event at a squash court.
Let's do that.
We're
up
the
for
only
it.
ones there.
But the thing of the connection, like that's we only need 5 people because that'll be the genesis of something great.
No,
Yeah.
I like the glass enclosure of most squash courts as well. There's something that sort of lends itself to sort of the crypto mindset. Just put yourself in that glass enclosure, be surrounded by people who are clawing at the doors. That's crypto.
That's crypto. Crypto is squash. Yes.
Actually, I've never thought of this. Who would win if we got all the people who are good at in a squash tournament? Who would win? I don't actually know. Adrian, I feel like you'd probably win.
I think LP would win.
You reckon LP?
Yeah, LP's
I
very
would
good at
say
squash.
you, but maybe that's just...
LP's extremely naturally athletic. Like you wouldn't know it by looking at him because he just looks like this normal dude. But he is extremely athletic and very fast, very agile, and very good at squash. LP would cream everything.
See, I don't look athletic because I'm not.
Well, you're doing this on no training.
That's right. That's right.
You can throw a basketball.
I can throw basketball.
But that's
badly.
about it.
I'm waiting for my growth spurt.
Yeah. that is true about LP. He like we were talking about LP before. He's a one-man human hurricane. He has this boundless energy. We don't know where he gets it from. He's the one person I know who can operate off very little sleep, and you can be completely unaffected by it. I got him into golf. That's the one thing I did, and he's like picked it up like phenomenally quick.
Yeah.
Golf is a really difficult sport. It takes a lifetime, and he's only played for relative for how much he's played. He's picked up incredibly quick. So I could believe the squash comment if he's actually played that. For a while. Yeah. What's your sport of choice then, Steve?
It used to be basketball. It's unfortunately 5'9". My career options were limited when it came to that game. So I just wander aimlessly now. My choice is just to wander through the streets.
So
and
you become
consume-
homeless.
Largely. Yeah, that's again. This is my work hack. It's in my 7-minute sleeps, and then I just wander through the streets, listening to podcasts.
But consumption-wise, Wrestlemania.
Wrestlemania. No, I still love the wrestling. No, I still love the wrestling. And so that for me, it's like Jiujitsu. Men in short shorts.
Yeah,
Who often find themselves with other men piling on. That's
Sounds
pretty
like
much
my thing.
Yeah, that's pretty much the sporting outlet for me.
It's the drama of it because, if football or any of these team sports that people go, I don't get into it. It's just dudes like doing this, but it's like there's the drama, there's the narrative of the season, there's a bunch of storylines to get behind. So in Wrestlemania, I guess it's all about the storylines and the dramas.
I said my life is just sprints when it comes to storyline. I like everything is episodic. I always say to Rochelle, the way we sort of plan stuff, it's kind of episodes over a season, and so I like things that have an end too. I mean, nothing more painful than a story that goes on forever. And so we always like to sort of see the ending of things. So maybe I gravitate towards these things. This is a nice
very
psychological
philosophical.
profile. Yeah, very good psychological profile here.
Where are we up to then with the who's big in WrestleMania? You still watching it?
No, I only sort of chime in periodically nowadays, but used to watch. They just had it actually. It's WrestleMania 41 just happened overseas. So John
Is Hulk
Cena.
Hogan still a thing?
Hulk Hogan's had some issues of late.
Right.
He's a bit buckled. No, John Cena won the 17th championship, which makes him the most successful champion in history. In case anyone's interested.
Is this because he's the most popular?
No, he's turned heel. He's turned bad guy. So
right.
after 20 years, he's become a bad guy. So I'm hoping to do the same thing. There'll be a heel turn Blockchain APAC event in about 17 years. I'll turn heel. And
Evil
people say
Steve, you're going to take off your glasses.
that's right.
I saw one of the funniest things. I'm not into WrestleMania. I kind of have it's on the periphery, kind of aware. The Macho Man, of course you know Macho Man, but Macho Man with the glasses, and he's got the Jared can splice it in somehow. He goes, he's like Duck Man. And I saw a Zoom conference where it was 20 Macho Man imitators, Elvis impersonators, Macho Man impersonators, just on a Zoom call together,
Yep.
just doing Macho. All they're competing for airspace, just doing their best Macho Man impersonations. It was incredible. I watched it for 5 minutes.
Icon. He's an icon. So that stuff never gets old for the old diehards like myself.
Okay, so what about you, Michelle? What's something we don't know about you?
Oh,
we know
that's
you do running,
cool.
but there's something else behind the scenes that we...
The secret sauce to me is I'm a very simple person. I like to travel a lot, so I do that. I run a lot, which is, I don't make that very much of a secret, to be fair. And I like working. I think a lot of people don't realise how much of a workaholic I actually am, but...
I can believe that. Both you guys have to be workaholics.
Yeah.
You guys are never... it's just non-stop, because like when you do events, like there's no... It's not like you can sort of show up at 9 and leave at 5 and be like, oh, I'll pick up stuff tomorrow. Like, it's just constant for events.
Yeah.
The secret, for us over an extended period of time is I describe the sort of extended network as a self-weeding garden now. I mean, we met so many great people. It's easy to keep people out who are extractive. It's kind of the thing for most people is they're looking for a commercial opportunity first and foremost, and so you engage with people that you think can deliver commercial outcomes, and that's kind of the driver. Mm-hmm. Over a long period of time, we've been able to meet a lot of people, and sometimes it makes commercial sense for people to do things, and sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't sort of impact what happens. And your question before, Lee, about one of the things that surprised us. It also surprises how much people attach weight to organisations as well. They don't focus on the individuals. Like people think the brands matter. Ultimately, it's the people that run the brands. And we've seen a lot of people who are humbled when their role changes. Like a lot of people are very comfortable. When you've got an acronym behind you normally, and it looks really impressive, and then they get told, thanks, champ, your time's up, and we just watch people sort of really fall in and fall over really quickly because their brand is represented by the company that they work for, as opposed to them. So we sort of we've seen a few of those seasons. I joke often I've got the weirdest sort of DMs because it's usually a bunch of middle-aged men that say, "Listen, I've been thinking about other career options." That's my DMs are populated with people transitioning roles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, happens a lot.
And where are those people coming from? They're not in crypto. Are they from outside looking to make a transition?
It depends where the market is. When the market's on the way up, they're all in TradFi looking to move into crypto. And then when the market turns down, they're in crypto deciding whether they should go back to TradFi. So it's I ride the waves, whereas most people say, what token should I buy? My DMs are filled with people saying, which vertical should I retool and reorient towards? So it's interesting watching that kind of play out.
Yeah, so when these people reach out to you, what are they after? After advice or after help? Or
both, usually. I mean, there's not a lot of experience. I mean, the reality in this space is often people will project success whether they're successful or not, and so it's very difficult then to sort of go into the public domain without putting the open to work symbol on your LinkedIn profile. So before you do that, people tend to reach out and say, here's where I thought I was sort of going, these are the skill sets. And it's funny, like my assessment of it, and it's sort of reflective of the risks that you've taken, Adrian, I think over an extended period of time, and Rochelle, with me, in professionally, is I don't say to people, what do you want to do? I say, first question I ask is, what's your risk tolerance? I say that's kind of the precursor for any advice I give. Because if you're 25 years of age and you don't have kids, you don't have this big go, you should absolutely swing for the fences. And sometimes you should swing for the fences when you're 55 because you go, what have you got to lose? You've got a period of time left in your career where you kind of need or you want a sort of parabolic outcome. And so that's kind of the scene setter. And if people are honest about that, then you can kind of orient them towards options, I think, that work. And that applies in all the things we're doing and in all the conversations, whether it's government or regulatory or industry focus. You just need to recognise what people's risk profile is. And again, I think it's where most people fall over. They just presume that if you're a safe pair of hands, someone should appreciate that's the case and carry that conversation forward. But the world does not tend to operate that way.
I'll tell you a story about Adrian. I remember when the day FTX was going down. And Adrian, because when Independent Reserve started, with 11 years old, now 12 years old, I guess. And crypto's a volatile industry. Starting a business is a volatile business. And I guess Adrian is a great example of someone who's got I don't know if you necessarily have a great appetite for risk. Not necessarily, maybe in volatility in prices, but certainly not in terms of how you run your business. But I remember the day FTX was going down, and most of the young guys had gone to water on the floor. Adrian walks by. I said, "Adrian, is this bad?" And he's like,
Seen worse.
Seen worse. You know what I mean? Walked by, made his coffee, walked back like nothing was going on.
There's a second characteristic, because part of it is the stabilising. In a big building, we've got a big ball in the middle to make sure the thing doesn't buckle too much when there's earthquakes. I think Adrian, of my observations, has that. And then the other bit is just the showing up. This is one of the things for us. We watch people wane. And so the test for Rochelle, years ago, Rochelle and I worked together for 10 years in a variety of different sort of ways. And I just said to her, you just got to show up. Like, you're going to go, if you tell me, this is where I'm at and I'm struggling and I can't show up in the next few months, you're going to go, it might mean you never show up again. And so you've got to keep sort of showing up.
That's the secret to doing anything well, just turning up. Because most people can't do that.
Yep.
Most people give up.
The work history for us, and it kind of ties into the showing up situation, I was 19 when I moved to Melbourne from Perth, and I got a job at a bar, and that bar was run by Steve.
Wow, here we go.
Backstory time. That bar was run by Steve. He owned it for 5 years at that point at the time, and I didn't have a uni degree. I wanted to be a journalist, and I didn't go down that path. And my next bet was just to learn how to run a business and start my own business myself. In that 5 years that I worked at the bar, I was a bartender, then I became the bar manager, and then I became the venue manager. And in that period of time, this is something that not a lot of people know about me. When I was 17, I had a jaw surgery, and I had a lot of reconstructive work that had to be done. And for a year and a half at the bar, I had to show up with 5 of my front teeth missing.
No way.
Yeah.
Which ones? Like,
this one to this one.
Front teeth.
oh, really?
So I can actually show you.
There you go.
This is a bit hectic. But I showed up every day for work with 5 teeth missing from my face. And I had to work in a customer service role. And there were many people who just said to me, how are you able to show up? I was 21 at the time. The way I look is very important to me. And yeah, a lot of people had said to me, I couldn't ever do what you did. And I had said to them, I have to show up because I need money to survive. And I was the venue manager. I knew that if I wasn't there, everything would sort of fall over. So you kind of have to grin and bear it, even though I couldn't at the time.
So there was a flip side to that.
Smile.
The flip side to that, and it's reflective again, this sort of general premise of needing to show up. I had people that I was involved in the business as well that said, it's not a good look that you've got a manager who doesn't have teeth. I said, how do you think she feels? And so it's kind of like, she's showing up, and so for me, the inversion was you had someone that was so committed to delivering an outcome for me that was willing to show up in what would otherwise be challenging circumstances. And that was kind of, for us, one of the fundamental tenets. I mean, Rochelle, skip past the fact when she'd only been in the job for 2 weeks, I drove her home from work one night, and I went home and I said to my wife, she'll either be the best employee we've ever had or she'll be gone in 2 weeks. Yeah. And 10 years later, we're still playing.
Unfortunately.
That's impressive.
Still
really
here.
is. That's amazing. That's a cool story.
Yeah.
But even at the time as well, there were many people on the business side of things with Steve who said, why are you investing time in this 23-year-old? And a lot of my friends were saying, just go get a job in another bar. Why is this stranger looking after you? And I think that's sort of come through with a lot of the work that we do now. We work really hard for each other's outcomes. I have a lot of faith in Steve. He has a lot of faith in me. We're essentially family, and I wouldn't just do this for anybody as well. But we have just invested so much time. We have so much trust in each other that we're not going to sit around and screw it up for each other as well. We consult on every business decision. We make sure that we're not trying to do the wrong thing by each other. And so far, it's worked out.
It's been entertaining.
It's been a bit of a laugh.
You guys have got a solid connection. It's obviously a great culture you have between the two. It's predominantly the two of you. If you expand, how do you kind of encapsulate that culture? And
it's kind of difficult to think about because you sort of have to pull in people you have that sort of trust with, I think. Yeah. But at the moment, for us, if we were to expand, I don't really know how we would tackle that just yet.
It's a funny inflection point for this issue. I think the way we tend to work is you can get an output that is equivalent for 3 or 4 people out of 2 if you work your ass off all the time. You can do that consistently. So that's kind of been the mechanism for us to sort of do it. So we have the benefit of that over a prolonged period of time. The other strength for us, and the thing that sort of amplifies our effectiveness, is the network now is extraordinarily large. This sounds odd, but I didn't realise until last year how many people I've met. Because Rochelle said to me, you do realise you know a lot of people. So it just felt like the consistency of it didn't really dawn on me.
I do want to go on a tangent with
Please.
That, though. So I had said to Steve last year when we travelled to Austin for Consensus, you do realise that people who recognise you, a majority of them won't come up to you because people just don't want to bother a stranger with their day.
He's a bit of a celebrity now.
For the worst kind.
There's kind of a ongoing joke that we laugh about when people come up to Steve and say, Steve from LinkedIn, right? Steve from LinkedIn. And it happens
you don't exist
more
outside
often.
of LinkedIn, Steve.
It happens more often than you believe. My favourite one was when we were boarding a flight to Austin and someone had approached Steve in San Francisco and said, Steve from LinkedIn, right? And he has to say, yes, it is me.
And so you're dealing now with LinkedIn fame.
It's an infamy because you can't monetize it properly. So the routers I chat to a lot, but the randomness of it is like literally in trains, coffee shops, all over the place.
In all cities all over the world, and it is funny now.
So the scale is the scale is the people who know us and trust us. So we have a lot of people that carry that conversation for us in other jurisdictions. And then the third thing at the moment, which is interesting for us, is tech is finally allowed. I mean, AI stuff for us just it relieves the tedium and the time of some tasks. So things that we would normally do that I think deliver value to a lot of others, literally sitting in spreadsheets, updating names, having a sense of how they fit in, we can do that in half the time. So I've said to Rochelle now, unusually we can probably claw back 3, 4, 5 hours each. Which is a lot in an average week, and suddenly we've got a half day resource, which is just us using tech to take the tedium out of the stuff we're doing. So
AI and automation has been a lifesaver.
Yeah, so that's idly. So that's how we would expand. But there's also there's sort of the recognition that it's actually not for a lot of people. Like we've worked with a few people who have not enjoyed the experience because it's like, this is just what we're going to do. We're going to do it on Saturday. We're going to do it on Sunday. We're going to be doing it 3 months from now. It's just for a lot of people they kind of go, we don't like the way. Yeah.
Because we do for example the 3-month lead up to Policy Week. It's 6 days a week, 7 days with Steve, every weekend. Just showing up. Steve got annoyed with me when I would always say we have to lock in. But you lock in for 3 months and then you deliver an outcome and then it's on to the next thing. So a lot of people can't operate in that type of way. And many people have told us that we are very chaotic to work with as well because we're not quiet personalities, I think.
But you guys understand each other because you've been together for so long, so to speak.
Yeah. I can tell the moods and vice versa. Like with Rochelle, I say to her, something's up, so nothing's up, and then we quickly get to the what's up.
Most of the time it's because I'm hungry. Most of the time.
So look, it's interesting now because that relationship stuff, again, it all is sort of the symbiotic relationship. We know that when it comes to people who are in interesting positions or influential positions, again, there are enough people that we can connect to. I can happily say, I've known Adrian for X amount of years, and you go, here's someone that's been continuous in the messaging that we pushed out. Adrian's shown up to a bunch of the things we've done over a long period of time and has said consistently that we want this kind of regulation, we operate this kind of business, this is how long we've been here, this is what we intend to do. And so that continuity for me ends up being the most valuable thing. So we can take a lot of other people into rooms. That's scalable, but very few people can scale it.
Yeah, right. So we're at a bit of a crossroads now, would you say? Like, I mean, things definitely seem to be changing. I mean, we always have this joke that, like, regulation and stuff is 18 months away. Of course, we've been saying that for the last 18 months, for the last...
How many years?
We said 18 months and 18 months. Certainly when the first day I showed up in the Pet Reserve, someone said 18 months away.
18 months away.
So I guess we're still 18 months away. But for the first time ever, we do have at least both sides of politics at least prepared to play the game to try and win over voters because they've recognised there's enough interest in this space that we have to have something. Doesn't mean they'll necessarily do anything, but at least we have both sides pandering somewhat to the space going, yeah, we've got a policy. Like, do you think is this are we actually 18 months away? Or we?
I think we are. I say this optimistically and not with the benefit of a lot of history that says what would be different in the 18 months that are going to sort of come down the pipes. And the answer is others have moved. And so it's not happening in a vacuum. And so much of what happened in the last few years is where do you want to sit? Are we fast movers? Are we fast followers? Blah blah blah. Things are now happening in less of a vacuum. You have Europe has MiCA that's rolled out. You've got the UK that's trying to play catch up in a variety of ways with the way it's looking at legislation. The US is barreling ahead. Stablecoin stuff will come out. Markets infrastructure stuff will come out. So if we do nothing, it's very obvious that we'll miss out. And I count on incentives and the absence of one thing, which is people don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to feel like they're falling behind. So it actually incentivises people to move forward. So I think we're in that window where we're being forced to make a decision. And again, a conversation dragged along. And one of the challenges I've got when I chat to regulators about certain views, I often say I can sit around for the next few years and have an academic argument about whether this thing fits or doesn't fit, works or doesn't work. I said, but if you can't build a business, it's not going to happen. And so that's kind of my pushback. There's no point. People intellectualise a lot of this often. And, when you talk to lawyers, they give you legal opinions. They go, but it's not necessarily business advice. And so, my position with regulators is you can do this, you can fit it in, you can shoehorn it. You go, but will anyone build a business under those conditions? And so that more pressing question, because it feels like we're closer to that decision having to be made in Australia, suggests to me that we'll get an outcome. Whether we like it or not is an entirely different thing, but I think we'll get an outcome where someone will say this is where the line is, and then at least people will know whether or not they want or think they can build a business in this jurisdiction.
Yeah. What do you think the risk is that we'll get an outcome we don't like?
I think it's more time, Adrian. I think, if we're watching other jurisdictions, people are learning to live with what's happening in other sort of places. And I think, stablecoins is a good example. My position about stablecoins in Australia is, who cares? Isn't what people do in Australia. You wait long enough to get the perfect bow around this thing. You get stablecoins, product market fit says US dollar, it says different markets, it says yes yield, no yield. You kind of go, what happens in that environment? I think it's very difficult for us as a market to say anything other than we'll regulate it in this particular kind of way. So if others have found a way to do it, it just, in a relative sense, will people care about the Australian market? And so that's my bigger challenge in terms of where we're kind of left. When I head to Singapore and the region, people like us because we don't walk in and say, there's an Australian view here. I walk in and deliberately say, behind Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, and someone else of interest regionally, also Australia. So we're going to sit in the back of the room unless you need us. And people like the fact that we don't walk in and say, Australia must be relevant in this room. We presume we're less relevant than we were a year or two ago. And so it actually makes for more useful conversations as opposed to people walking in and saying, I'm going to take my seat at the front of the table. So I think, the longer we wait, the longer we'll just copy and paste. And then again, I think commercially becomes a challenge. And then, in your sector, consolidation. The reality here is some people, you'll have to get bigger or smaller and more lean. You're going to go, this midpoint is a real challenge, I think, for a lot of businesses in Australia. A good size is not a good size if everyone's either getting bigger or the efficiencies of being much more nimble and being smaller. So there's a lot up in the air at the moment.
Yeah, right. From our point of view, I guess, like in Singapore, we operate predominantly in two jurisdictions. We have Australia, we have Singapore. Singapore's been a newer business for it, but there's so much more clarity over there. And the reality is that once you have sort of laws around it, there's just so much more business in Singapore that is happy to engage with us over there because they're like, we know what the rules are, we can get involved now. And Australia is just like, if those rules, once they become clear, like so much more participation.
There's still the spectrum too. This conversation I had the other day with someone. They said, what do you do? I said, here's what I do. And then it was straight into, I don't like crypto. I said, that's okay. Let's park crypto. Let's park speculative crypto. I said, can we have a Bitcoin conversation? I said, it's too volatile. I said, doesn't mean it's not valuable. I said, volatility doesn't, exclude value. It's like, okay, let's park that. I said, what do you think about stablecoins? I went, oh yeah, stablecoins. Okay, good. What do you think about cross-border payments? Yeah. What do you think about okay, you live here. And so this thing of, I don't like it. If I go back to when Adrian and I first met, people were like, everyone's anti-everything. Blockchain doesn't work, crypto's rubbish, none of it. And now we go, I'm going to make all these exceptions. And I figure our positions have largely remained the same. We've sort of expanded, whereas most people are now somewhere on the spectrum. Very difficult to find someone that doesn't think central bank digital currencies or payment tokens or stablecoin. There's something that people go, I don't mind that bit. You're going to go, okay, well, you've warmed up much more to me than I have to you. Generally, is kind of my view in that thing. So that conversation is easy to have, I think, I know in jurisdictions like Singapore, because you've got people who have a traditional financial service business seeing those adjacencies much more obviously, whereas here, people still think they're in this sort of this vertical. That inability to kind of go, if I'm in banking, I could also find value in what is a payments infrastructure that's been developed. People seem to think that if they're in a bucket here, then you can't possibly shift because it's so different. But in other jurisdictions, I don't have that same experience.
Yeah, it's fascinating because that's very solid thinking, which is kind of in itself not great, right? Because we sort of see it. The good thing about the exchange is we kind of see a broad section of kind of everything. We see anything from the NFT guys through to the payments people through to just the guy who just wants to speculate on random, meme coins or whatever. And the view that I've been in for half as long as you guys, but like over the last say 4 or so years, I'm surprised by the breadth of people who are now consider it pretty standard, right? We see huge growth now in things like SMSFs and the age group of people who are just like, I want to park a larger chunk of my section in Bitcoin. I get it now. It's totally legit. It's completely, it's the rate of change is still accelerating, right? It's not like I don't know if we can say we've gone mainstream yet, but it feels like the rate of acceptance, the rate of change of attitudes is still accelerating. So it'll be fascinating to see where we're going to be. You've made this comment so many times at different events. It's kind of like it's very easy to look at where we are now and go, it doesn't solve all the solutions that's been promised, but it completely misses the dynamic and the trajectory of which we're headed on and the speed at which things are changing. You know what I mean?
This was a conversation at a conference a few weeks back where someone said, if tokenisation is so great, why isn't it taken over the world? I said, any point in time assessment fails. I said, I can give you every technology over the last 2 or 3 decades where if a point in time assessment was made early, it failed. And I rolled out because I'm getting old. I said, I remember when Google wasn't really a thing, people didn't like it, suddenly was. Social media wasn't a thing until it took over the world.
E-commerce.
In-commerce. All these things were like, at that point in time, I used to do consulting work around the digital asset space, the digital sort of media space, and people said, what do I care about what you had for breakfast? That was the sort of the general sense of social channels. And I said, somewhere between that and today, it changed the direction of elections. You go, wow, who saw it coming? You go, well, if you're paying attention, you saw it coming because you saw the influence and you saw what this thing was sort of doing. And it's lost, and it's still lost because most people are pretty terrible predictors of the future. I think all studies show that people tend to look backwards to predict the future, and it invariably is a pretty poor way to decide where we're going.
Yeah, that's true. If you look at things, the rate of technology, it's not rate of technology adoption, all this kind of stuff. It's never linear. It's exponential. And so inevitably, if you look backwards, you'll project it out the same rate it's come before, and of course it's exponential. So you constantly be undershooting. You can imagine. There's a great analogy. Someone told me is like if you took someone from 1000 AD and plonked them in 1300 AD, they'd probably be like, styles have changed, but things are we're still rolling by candlelight, and horses and buggies are still a thing. But you take someone even from 1950s and plonk them in just like today, it would be a completely different world.
Forget about it.
Right? Yeah.
I think I deal with a lot of those people. If I'm honest, I sit there going, like the technology.
That is the average person, though.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are not necessarily exposed. They're stuck in their ways. No one wants to adapt to change. I think naturally humans like their routine. Yeah. And then when you show them something that doesn't necessarily align with how they want to live their life, they don't adapt to it.
I find this is the thing, there's a dislocation. One of the benefits, I think, of having Rochelle as a business partner, and then, the previous business I used to own is I was exposed to a lot of people who were 18 to 24 who were thinking constantly in 18 to 24-year-old terms. And I sat across from some business people the other day to dinner, and they were chatting about financial advice. And one of them said, what we need to do is make financial advice tax deductible, from the ages of 18 to 30. I said, most people get their financial advice from TikTok. He said, I'm not going to be on TikTok. They're idiots on TikTok. I said, yeah, okay. So what you're suggesting is not anything that anyone would consume. People aren't going to go to a financial advisor, pay for something that they hope to get a tax deduction on. They're going to see who they trust online, what they're doing, and probably mimic that behaviour. I said, so you've got to at least acknowledge that's the behaviour. And the response was, no, they're idiots. I went, okay, I'm going to leave that there. And so that's a constant sort of
It's challenge. A refusal to kind of see what's kind of evidently in front of you.
It was the same at an event Steve attended, and he'd asked everybody in the room how many of them were on TikTok, and these are very important financial service people. 4 people in a room of 100
2 out of 100
would have raised their hands. And the question was, how do you know what your customers are consuming in what capacity on what platforms? And every single person I know has a TikTok account, consumes all their stuff on TikTok. That's probably the most popular app these days that people are using. So how are you not viewing how people in those age brackets...
That event was a cyber event. And I said, it was a bunch of cyber professionals. And I said to them, how are you protecting people from their own behaviours if you're not on the channels that they use and you don't see what the behaviours are? And there was this stunned silence in the room. And the reality is you're going to go, I don't understand how people can presuppose they understand behaviours of others who they've never given consideration to. You can't always have the experience, but you need to know that people are living on their phones and consuming things a particular way. And so that's a challenge. And I've seen that. So the social platforms are the obvious one. I was at an event where the ACCC was present, and I asked a question. I said, how are you convincing people who get their news from a paper, which turns over page by page, usually the AFR, once a day, how are you convincing those people that these social channels have some value at the same time as you're saying there are challenges? And the response, candidly, was, it's not easy to convince people who don't use the technology. And so that acknowledgement for me was useful, but it was that I'm just reminded. Some people still consume their news by turning over pages of a newspaper. Few and far between, but it's why the AFR continues to be a successful publication in a variety of formats.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people consuming their news on Facebook and Twitter, and there's the clickbaity titles. So,
the interesting thing about new ideas is it often takes a new generation to become the main generation for the ideas to become the mainstream. And because older people or people of a certain age, they tend to have a certain view of the world and they don't really evolve that view. Like, I'm probably reaching that age. I don't use TikTok. And then an interesting thing I've been kind of having some thoughts about is as people live longer and longer and as people have less kids, the pace of innovation will actually decrease because new ideas won't be embraced as quickly and there'll be more people thinking in the old ways, which will actually reduce innovation. So that's a bit of a counterpoint to, I guess, the exponential growth of new ideas.
Yeah, so both of them are super interesting points. I mean, the fact that you're self-aware enough to know you're choosing not to opt into some of this stuff. It's a very different approach to some people who are going to go, I'm still across the detail because I've read the article, and that for me is kind of where the problem sort of lies for people. The way I'm consuming things at the moment, I listen to podcasts at 2x speed. It's probably part of the reason I speak. I think it's why I speak so quickly. Is I listen to everyone's, like it weirds me out when I play it at normal speed.
You can't do this one at double because it'll be 4x.
Be like the chipmunks.
Everyone's slowing this one down, everyone's minus.
How deep would your voice be at normal speed, Steve?
I was going to try to, unfortunately, I can't do a deep voice. But that for me is that consumption is kind of, in some way, sort of ingested. And then it's funny in terms of the tools and the way you sort of do stuff. I listen to articles, as in I turn them into audio and listen to them, much more efficient. I listen to podcasts at 2x speed, and then the fluffery that you normally will hear, you kind of go, even if it's entertaining, you through it sort of more quickly. All those things just allow me to sort of consume and discard. And so I know that's not normal in terms of most of the people we're dealing with aren't doing that. They're reading the same things and going to the same sources. Mine is kind of that approach. But that's why I see the opportunities in a lot of the digital asset space and I was chatting to a law enforcement professional recently about all the things that are happening with agentic AI, which is basically on pump.fun. People are betting on a bunch of things and then pushing them into an exchange when the bonding curve kicks. And it was kind of like, can you tell me a little bit more about that? I'm thinking you're the professional in this space that should. But it was like, the only reason I know is because I try to maintain an aperture that allows me to say well, that's super interesting, not related to what I do day to day, but I can see where that potentially impacts the way things will happen sort of downstream. So I'm less surprised when volatility becomes the norm in markets like this.
Just to add one more sort of viewpoint to all that. We had some guy, Nap Enjoy from the IMF was on. We had a chat with him and he was I asked him a question. It was about looking at what the IMF was doing. For those who know, they know. If not, check it out. But like they were basically running this kind of, protocol, which you put your meme coins in and it kind of does its thing. But I asked him, I said, well, look, how do you think it has to go? Do you think you guys are just building for the future, or do you think you kind of need to build something to onboard new people who aren't in the space? And his response was, he goes, we don't have to worry about people who aren't in the space because they'll all be dead soon. That's his approach. He's like, we're just forging ahead and forget everyone else. I was like, okay. No, it was good. I mean, that's in reality, that's, life just moves on and you either get with it or you get left behind.
And I subscribe to the view that the internet is undefeated. Like in many respects, in our lives, you sort of go, people look at it and go, this is rubbish. You go, it might be rubbish, but there are 500 million people who are interested in it, or there's 100,000. Okay, these markets are being formed and they get stood up and then they fall over. But, that judgment, and this is what the interesting conversation about for businesses as well. When marketers do a bunch of things, you're going to go, we thought it was really great. Did anyone watch it? It's like, no, it wasn't great. I said the arbiter is it's wonderful. You can put it might have value. You go, but the reality here is unless it's grabbing people's attention. And so I'm always trying to look for those cues, which is why I'm sort of well suited to being in this space because whatever direction you look at, it's 360 degrees surround sound.
Right. Well, I've got a big question for you, Steve. This definitely wasn't something Jared just sent to me. No, it was. But it's a great question. So what would it take for you to consider that your work has been accomplished?
I think it's been accomplished because I think we've had we've seen people who have started on a variety of sort of paths because of us, and so that's probably one of the most satisfying things for us. Where Rochelle and I will talk about it. Go, I don't know where it ends, but we have people that come up and say, "You do realise my first job was because of this thing you did." Like that was the first room I sat in, and we've had it enough times where we go, "Shut up!" Like we've watched people who we think are doing real, and they'll just say, "You do realise that I made it." There was one person who said she drove an hour or two, like hours, to get to our event to talk to one person who was in the VC space. And she said, "I got that job." Like that was you gave me an opportunity to be present in that sort of stuff. So we know we've got a lot of those stories, and so I won't be around long enough to know what the ultimate impact. But we just know there's a lot of people who have said, you gave us opportunities that we didn't otherwise sort of have. We sort of platformed a lot of people, whether or not they managed to do anything with it or not. And so, that for me is the thing. So I think in that sense, I kind of feel I'm much more, I hate the word the journey, because when everyone says, it's all about the journey, that's crap most of the time. But we know we've seen people who've sort of been set on their way through a bunch of the stuff. So that's kind of the metric for me.
It's now turning into businesses as well. So people have come up to us and said, like, the reason why I have this job is because of you, and now there's the reason why these business partnerships have come together is because we met in a room that we have orchestrated and stuff. So it's getting to that stage that I think, like, for me personally, I really enjoy seeing the business acumen come together for people like that. As well as their individual successes as well, but
and we know one of the challenges sort of related to the question is I don't have kids, and so for me I have the benefit that is I can spend my time trying to influence and impact other people's lives more beyond the family sort of unit. Again, it's a very difficult thing for people when you've got the kids. You got to go. The sacrifice is you're trying to create the best outcomes for your family, and often it comes at the expense of strangers. For me, I've had the benefit of trying to help strangers on the way much more. So it's a very different dynamic, but I'm sort of aware that that's kind of the ability that we've created for ourselves. And Rochelle had said on that side, the sliding door moment is, she could have been out the door after 2 weeks and would never seen her again. We sort of sit back now and go, well,
could have walked into a different bar.
It's pretty fast. I guess that's kind of your the conception of new ideas and businesses. It's kind of like little children, really. That'd be fascinating. Have you got any success stories or anyone you can share with us? Best to keep
best we don't. There's just, in terms of people in the space, like when we chat to a lot of people, like Greg Apron's a good example. Greg was doing some stuff in unrelated space. It was in the golf sort of space, and then he said there was one message I sent him about NFTs. He went, these NFTs look interesting, and then reoriented his career in that regard. There's a variety of people who Rochelle had to remind me they're in the country because of us. Like they got permanent residency based on some of the work that they've done. There was one person who was literally sitting in an audience, asked one smart question, got hired. So there's lots of those conversations in different rooms, Lee. And so we see them everywhere. But importantly, and sort of related to the question about the DMs, we see people when they're at their worst, as in when they're suffering. The challenge that says the career has not gone. I mean, this is one of the difficult things I have the advantage of now as someone in their 50s is, I've watched people who thought the career is unending up, and they go, it's what happens when it goes sideways and backwards. And so when we've been able to help people kind of stabilise and find a different kind of purpose or a slightly better purpose, that's been interesting to sort of observe as well. So we're doing a bit of that. So it feels like community service sometimes. I need to explain that to my wife when we go back to our meagre accommodations and go, listen, we've helped a lot of people, we think there's a lot of value in it, but hopefully at some point in time there's some bag I'll be selling and pitching and I'll be okay. But it's interesting to watch that dynamic.
Well, you've seen some change. I mean, Adrian had hair when business was started.
I still have hair. It's just short. That's how I choose to wear it.
Because, I mean, I guess speak to some of the lawyers and people like Adrian, you've been around for 12, this is probably your 12th year in crypto, really. Something like that. Like, the crowd's matured, I guess.
We've all gotten older.
Well, we've all just gotten older, like 12 years. Like, everyone's been, like a lot of people now have been in this industry for a decade. So the face of crypto and the face of blockchain has changed, not just for the people who have gotten older within it, but new people coming to it. There's a lot more people who transition from other careers, as you just mentioned, who are in their 40s and 50s. The idea that crypto bro in his 20s or whatever on his laptop is the minority, really. I mean, most people are just kind of middle-aged people, can I call them that, who are going, this is actually a cool thing, and they're bringing their expertise, their TradFi or legal experience or marketing experience, whatever it is, they're bringing their experience from other venues, and there's undoubtedly been a lot of maturing in the space, not just because of the wrinkles on the face, but just generally the maturing of the space, not least the work you guys have done. So what have you guys sort of noticed there in the maturing, and what kind of people do you think we sort of need still?
Well, my favourite thing I've seen has been the amount of women we saw in risk and compliance roles in London that have definitely set up themselves like good career opportunities as well. It was interesting when we were going through the list of running the RegTech Forum, the amount of people in risk and compliance roles were women. I think we struggled to find a man to put on panels in London because they just all had, and I think women are able to deal with risk better statistically. I can't remember. There's some statistics. ChatGPT can tell us that later. But that was something that I thought was very interesting when we were in London as well. But outside of that, there's been definitely a lot of different people who've come into these roles and matured along the way as well.
And I think the thing for me that I watch is, I did a traditional education with the university for X amount of years to get the qualification. You go, what a terrible way to learn. For me, that recognition for me, I see this sort of age bracket where if you are 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s or whatever, the amount of resourcing, I tell, Rochelle stories. When I was a young man and I went to the library where I went and bought this book and the repository of knowledge was the book. I said the ridiculousness of that consumption. I think this is one of the problems for people who are, even from in their 30s now and 40s and 50s, they don't reckon they go every bit of information is at your fingertips. They go, the only sort of defining characteristic of success or otherwise in this space is how much are you willing to try to consume and learn. So that's the bit that I'm super excited about. I wouldn't have thought when I was 20 that I would say as a 50-year-old I can build a new business. You're going to, of course not. There's all sorts of impediments to it. Right now, going to go technologically, it's never been cheaper. Educationally, it's never been easier. Resource-wise, globally, all those sort of component parts, I've never seen them built out. And so I think that's part of the maturation here. That if you're a 30-year-old in this space, you actually think you can see a future of yourself beyond the tap on the shoulder that is, thanks champ, you've been here long enough. Here's your gold watch. out you get. I think those options are becoming obvious to some people, and to others they're entirely oblivious, which I sort of appreciate as well. But personally, I can't consume stuff enough at this point in time.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, let's talk about Dubai. So we've got Dubai coming up next week. Adrian, you're going to be there. We've got a big contingent. Dubai is certainly on the horizon for us, and we're looking at it pretty closely. How are you guys going to attack this week? Hey, what's in it for you? What do you think you can get out of it? What's your game plan?
So different regions, different sort of, everything is bespoke. The thing about sort of Dubai and the UAE for us is we view it as a horizon play. I think the product market fit of the UAE is very different to a lot of other jurisdictions. It expects to act as a bit of a hub and spoke. And so it's not competing with the US, it's not competing with the market, it's trying to say, can we be the centre of a bunch of other useful sort of outcomes? So for us, that's a long burn relationship. And so, we're going there and taking our time to get to know people that are on the ground, and we'll revisit Abu Dhabi probably later in the year. So the approach is as many people as possible, get a sense of things that are sort of a much closer to the ground version. We're going to point zero in Zurich after that. That's a different kind of environment. There's a lot of policy people and reg people who are sort of decision makers and sort of C-suite level. That for us is to get a sort of a sense at the opposite end of that spectrum, those who are sort of influencing decision making at the top of businesses, what they're doing, and we've got a lot of strong networks there. So that is higher touch and sort of reinforcement learning of relationships. And whereas Dubai for us is let's survey the territory and sort of try to get a sense of it. So those two markets are a good example of sort of different approaches that sort of satisfy different rooms.
Adrian, you've had at least some engagement. I mean, you've dealt with regulators, or at least, well, not regulators, politicians here. You've dealt with them in Singapore, and you definitely had some experience in Dubai as well. What would you sort of categorise the experience in Dubai like?
Very professional. I think Dubai has done a good job hiring good people from around the world to run the regulator. They don't try and do that. I think they realise that they don't have the expertise in-house, so they just got the best people that they could. And from everything I've seen, it's a very well-run regulator. And we're looking forward to applying for a licence.
I think that one of the critical things, sort of echoing that very view, is there is actually a sense of competition. There's competition between the regulators. I mean, the regulators are competing jurisdictionally and sort of, across the region. And there's also incentive alignment. You've got a region that is trying to change its economy in a way, and they actually feel the impending clock. I think Australia will continue to dig iron ore out for decades and decades to come. There's a general sense there that diversification away from oil and some other things that have disproportionately provided. Well, they know they're in a hurry. And so it's interesting watching that dynamic at play, because if they don't do something generationally, they can see how quickly it's going to impact downstream generations. So
they're transforming their economy. They're doing it at a point in time where they're still very strong, which is a great time to do it, but it's the time where I guess a lot of people don't do it because they feel like everything's still going well, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. But in Dubai, they realise that this, as you said, this won't continue forever. Yeah. Let's change whilst we can and whilst we're still strong, and that's what we're doing, and then they're doing it well.
Yeah, kind of like a Kodak moment, so to speak, and
They don't want to be the Kodak.
Yeah, and I think there's a recognition there you need stickiness to in this sort of relationship, and I think one of the interesting things the regulators are doing across the UAE is they're saying you need to show us there's a commitment to the jurisdiction. You know, it's not bring us your money and you get a business. It's actually bring us some money, show us you've got commitment here. You know, hire some people in the region, put some roots in, and so I think that's an interesting approach for them, and so it's less of a. And I think sometimes the perception is they're trying to move quickly and trying to do this. You go actually asking people to put roots into the jurisdiction. That was kind of the takeaway for me. Late last year, most jurisdictions are doing that. Ours is, are we getting the settings right? If the settings are right, people will come. Whereas, you know, I've found in other jurisdictions, it's just a more proactive attempt to say, we could be the right thing, tell us what you think you need, and we'll tell you what the sort of the minimum requirements are for you to get a foothold in the jurisdiction. We're not doing the same thing here. We're saying when we tell you what the rules are, make a decision as to whether or not it satisfies your sort of business needs. And I do worry. I think the industry suffered a few years ago. There was lots of chatter about the sky's falling and people are going to leave. It happened after that. I think a lot of people just went, it's just not a jurisdiction that's easy to set up in. And COVID was a bit confusing for people. You know, people stayed because they had to. I mean, we literally did a wonderful job of locking down the entire country. So even if you wanted to leave, you couldn't. And so this sort of drift that happened post-COVID, not as pronounced, but we see it when we talk to all the lawyers we chat to. You know, one of the questions I ask, you know, the full gamut of the lawyers that I tend to engage with is, are you recommending that anyone domicile their business here? If they're starting a business now, they're going to should they be domiciling? Yeah. And the answer is invariably, almost exclusively, no. Like, we're not telling people to set up in Oz, which is wasn't the case a few years ago. So
it's
we need
a bit sad, isn't it?
Sad.
I mean, the only reason to be in Australia is if you're from Australia.
Yeah.
There's no reason to come here, which is really quite terrible.
Yeah, and so that's a challenge, and hopefully I've said it swung some way, it sort of went slowly one way. I'm a big believer in signals, and this is one of the things I've tried to impress upon government and regulators is just showing that you are open to the conversation is enough of a signal often. For people to start moving sort of interest and attention. You don't have to have the complete sort of versioning sort of done. You can just say, we're thinking about it. What do you think about us thinking about it? And so that's something which I think we've lagged in recent times.
All right, well, now back to reach arounds in Dubai. Doing the reach around in Dubai to get in touch with people. Yeah, so we still should cover off on the Dubai stuff because, like I said, we've lost a lot of businesses who just left because the opportunity there was just better. I actually be interesting when we have a chat to them to see how many have cited regulatory issues, but I mean the opportunity is just there. So that's why people are going there, because people are going to follow their nose to the money. And it's just a shame because there's still a lot of businesses and would have stayed here if the opportunity was just a bit better. And part of that is the certainty with our regulation. That's the reality of it.
And I think part of it is the door closed, or is it a brick wall? I mean, it's one of the challenges of the conversations we have around the VC space. You know, I've been involved in the VC conversations for a long time, and the truth is, in Australia, they just generally don't invest in this space. You look at the statistics, so they ignore it at a state level, at a federal level. People don't invest in this space. So if you can't have a conversation that might lead to something, it's sort of problematic. I think in jurisdictions like Dubai, if someone can't help you, they're likely to have a conversation, you know, with someone who potentially can. Same as with sort of our experience in the US. Like, you know, if it's not someone that can help you, there's someone who they probably know, and so there's some handoff of a conversation that you're able to do, and that's a problem in this space, I think, locally.
You know, we just don't quite have that in Australia, which is a shame because like everyone does know each other. In crypto, it's a little bit more tight knit, and I feel like there's a little bit of that, but not to the extent we sort of see it. And Dubai, you get a bit of a vibe for that as well. Everyone I met in Dubai, a lot of Russians in Dubai, but the same thing. Everyone wanted to chat to you. Everyone if you said, hey, you're new in Dubai, you're looking to come here. Like, who do you need to know? I can find it out for you.
I think this naturally happens in a place where there's expats, because expats tend to create a community and they tend to want to help other people into their community. That's probably what we see.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, the shortest path between 2 points, and we have a tendency locally just to keep sort of drifting around those points. They're not sort of connecting the dots. When we ran Policy Week a few weeks ago, we had a Singaporean politician who came into town, and one of my favourite moments was she walked up to the stage, and rather than walking down along and up the stairs, she literally just jumped up on the stage. I said, what an efficient way to do things. Wow. And I said, it was such a strong Singaporean signal. It's kind of like, this was a really functional way to do it. I could have gone the long way. I got the same outcome. So I said to her at the end of the session, I said, I suppose you're going to jump down again. And she said, yeah, I am. And literally jumped off the stage. And so it was just a nice sort of reflection. You kind of go, there are lots of ways to do things. Sometimes we overcomplicate it. And I think you know, the experience we have in Singapore is people, it's easier to read people. I mean, they're a really friendly community to sort of get to know as well. But they're also very functional in the advice and they give you, and sort of they know that they want business to happen, and so there's not a lot of wasted time there. I think people have a greater sense of sort of purpose when it comes to this subject matter, and if they can help you, they will. And if there's a commercial outcome, they can deliver that for you. It's just you don't spend as much time trying to figure out what people's motives are. I think it's just easier to get a sense of what the direction is. It's a city we've enjoyed enormously.
How refreshing.
Yeah, it does make for a change, mate. I mean, the reality is, I guess a lot of people they're worried about stepping on other people's toes, whereas I think it's incentive alignment in a market like Singapore is easier to determine, and I think Singapore is a good reflection of the continuity of it as well. The faces that we've seen and sort of building that. Hong Kong as a jurisdiction, there was an attempt to put the foot down on the pedal a little bit, and you kind of see those ebbs and flows, whereas Singapore continues just to power on.
Steady as you go. All right, I think we've got on to an hour and a half. I know you could talk. In fact, we've got 4 hours worth of content. Just
when you slow it down.
Pace of chat. What else should we cover before we sort of wrap things up? What do you actually, just on a personal level, what are you most looking forward to then with your travels coming up?
I'm really excited about DC. To be able to work with the GBBC, and Sandra had approached us the final day of Policy Week, and asked us if we'd be willing to help them run their event on Capitol Hill. And I said, you don't have to convince me twice. So to be able to just run or help run something in the capital of the US is probably going to be one of the lights, the beacon that I'm looking forward to the most.
Will you meet Trump? Is that the...
Look, I don't think so. Okay. They're trying to get a lot of influential people though, so it'll be very interesting to see who they get.
I think I'm on a chat where he's revealing some plans.
With Trump himself?
Yes.
It's similar for that sort of a similar reason for me. The US bit. I mean, the reality here is in Australia we're so far from everything. It's hard to get a sense of where we sort of, if you are to benchmark yourself and say over a long period of time, we've had an enormous number of really sort of wonderful relationships, and sort of we think some influence occur as a result of the stuff we've done. So it's nice. It feels like in an episodic way. Kind of feels like the end of a series. Like, we get to the US, we go to Capitol Hill.
Big finale.
It feels like, what do we do here? And this is one of the things, Rochelle, and it sounds contrarian. Policy Week was an enormous success. I said to Rochelle, we're likely to do one next year. I said, that feels like the end of it. Like, that would be it feels like a good movie franchise. That'd be Policy Week 3. It's got to know, rather than coming back with, who likes the 4th and the 5th? Unless it's the Fast and the Furious, probably think the series is kind of done. And so we like the idea of getting to a point and saying, that's as much as you could take that conversation sort of forward. And
we've still got 18 months to regulation, so we're for at least one more policy.
Adrian, you remember, when I left the role at Blockchain Australia, I surprised everyone. You go, don't overstay your welcome. That is, everyone's much happier to see you leave early than they are to think, well, it's been here way too long. And so we like to end things before they feel like they've come to their natural life. And so I think the timing, what I said to Rochelle about Policy Week 4 would be, if we're still talking about it, Adrian, you're going to go, I don't think it's a conversation we really want to invest months of our lives in if we're still trying to convince people to get across. So that's the way we sort of approach some of these things.
You reckon you're going to get some Wrestlemania in while you're there?
Wrestlemania just happened. There's a reasonable chance I'll make it to some. If I'm lucky, I'll be in the right city at the right time, and I might get Raw or I might get SmackDown or something else.
Who's your favourite wrestler?
For me, I like old school ugly wrestlers, literally ugly wrestlers. out of shape wrestlers, ugly. I like.
You really would love jiu-jitsu.
So
should come to training today.
So there's one. So you'll know, as an example, if you see any mobile Wi-Fi and it says Greg the Hammer Valentine, that's my Wi-Fi sign in there. So my hotspot's there. So if you want to look up a wrestler who got hit by the ugly stick a few times, Greg the Hammer Valentine's the guy.
Greg the Hammer Valentine.
So if you look him up, you'll see someone that got the most out of himself. Is the way I describe.
You're the Hammer, though.
No, I'm not the Hammer, but that is an example of someone who I feel overachieved relative to what people. He wasn't good looking. He didn't look athletic, and he managed to squeeze.
Steve the Hammer Vallas, I think. So, what costume would you go for? Like the budgie smugglers with the face mask, like the Mexican style? Would you go something like, I don't know? What would be your theme?
So here's
The
what
hammer.
I can
What
tell
would
you
be the
about.
hammer's theme?
Here's what I can tell you about the wrestlers. They regret at some point in time wearing just the shorty shorts because life has a tendency to start pulling down in a gravitational sense.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be easy to
Not
change your
even-
thing.
so
once
they, so you've always got to be rig ready. Now, clearly, I haven't been rig ready since the early 80s. And so at this point, I will be wearing an overcoat, thick pants, and
But you're the
maybe some
hammer. The
boots.
hammer. Okay, it's got to be.
Yeah, look, I'd be a tradesman, so I can be fully dressed. I'll wear a vest, but no, there'd be nothing risque. I said, I have Monty Burns' body under this shirt, so I don't want to be scaring children.
Steve the Hammer Vallas just rock up in a tool belt. And
Just a tool belt, just so I can put somewhere I've got to put my thumbs. That's the way we'd.
Steve
That's
the
the way
tool man, Vallas.
some point we're going to see Steve without a shirt. He's going to be absolutely jacked.
yeah.
I reckon I should be able to generate this.
Yes. Yeah, let's go for the RO version. Let's work an effort. But, yeah, that's how and where we're sort of rolling now. We're looking forward to the next few months.
Well, I'll be stalking both on LinkedIn and making sure I comment. Just all right. Let's wrap it up there then. That was awesome, guys. That was heaps of fun. We're not going to see you for a while. Well, actually, that's a lie. I'll see you in Dubai. But after that, we won't see you for a while. But we will be following you on LinkedIn and liking you as a internet figure, famous internet figure.
Steve from LinkedIn.
Steve from LinkedIn. Steve the Hammer from LinkedIn.
Like an old wrestler, you'll find me at some point in time going to like the shows where I go, who do I make this out to? And for $18, you'll get the special personalised photo and Steve from LinkedIn signature. That's my retirement plan.
Slightly cooler than Tom from MySpace.
Yeah. But if you go to Wrestlemania with Steve from LinkedIn, like Vallas, that's not as good as Steve the Hammer.
That's true. I said that's a good idea for a tax deduction. At some
I'm
point
not
in
going to
time.
start that for you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Jared.
Thanks very much.
That was awesome.
That was fun.